back at my previous videos and found out that the previous video that I'd created explaining all this stuff has mysteriously been deleted. So as a result, I'll try to make this short and sweet, remake it, and this time put a stupid filter on so that I don't look so incriminating. So back in 1985, an ex-KGB agent named Yuri Bezmenov came to the United States and went on live television to explain something. What he explained was a four-step process called ideological subversion. Ideological subversion was a tactic that was created by the Communist Party. It was used in Soviet Russia, it was used by the Nazis, and it was used by several other foreign countries in order to turn once free democracies into a communist state. It is one of the sole reasons why communism became the biggest national threat to Western society immediately after World War II. Unfortunately, we were a little bit late to the ball game, and communism had already rooted itself within the universities of Western society, primarily the United States and the UK. Anybody remember the hippie movement in between World War II and Vietnam? Yeah, let's just say social and spiritual enlightenment wasn't an accident. So to go back to my first statement about the KGB agent that went on live television, his name was Yuri Bezmenov. On that live broadcast, he proceeded to explain the 4 steps of a process or a tactic called ideological subversion. Now, ideological subversion was never meant to actually take place within a year or two. Its primary goal is focused on a generation or two ahead of time that it's actually implanted within the society that you're trying to capture. The reason for this is exactly what happened in Western society. If you can change the minds of a single generation, that generation will ultimately become the professors of the universities that teach the next. That's the point. So what is ideological subversion? It is the legitimate 4-step process that takes place within a society. Those 4 steps being, number 1, demoralization. Number 2, destabilization. Number 3, crisis. And number 4, normalization. Demoralization is the seed of propaganda that is planted in the heads of younger generations so that they start questioning and revolting against the culture that they were brought up in. Destabilization is the process in which you break down all previous stable factors of a society, being the family, being education, being culture, religion, moral virtue, and even respect for authority. The stage of crisis is simply a stress factor. It's added to the current destabilization of a society, and it's usually artificially created. It's something such as a pandemic, a war, something like social injustice to where people start revolting against their own government or authority. One of the most popular methods throughout history in order to achieve crisis is the division of the people, whether that be through class, religion, race, economic status, or even political affiliation. What you're left with is a people that have been demoralized, which means they no longer believe in the culture that they grew up in and the system that they live in. They have been destabilized, which means they are no longer working within a unified system or structure of society to achieve an ultimate goal. And they are now facing a crisis that is adding stress to the situation and adding more division and more chaos to everyone's lives who are involved. Now comes the final stage of normalization. Hitler called this the final solution. And basically what it is the government coming in and saying, look, I know everyone's life is hell right now. Everything is chaos. There's no order and nothing makes sense. But I am here to help and I will solve all of your problems. So at this point, the goal or the mission of ideological subversion is now a success. It's been achieved. And what history books fail to tell you is what comes after this achievement. I won't go into detail as to what actually has taken place throughout history. You can look that up for yourself. But I will leave you with this simple statistic. Now, as horrible as he was and as horrible as that regime was, maybe I can put some things into perspective for you. Hitler killed 6 million Jews. That's a lot of people. We've always been taught that Hitler was the pinnacle of evil. He was the face of evil. He was the most wicked man in human history, almost. So it seems. But if you look at communism, and people who have used the exact same tactics that I just described to you, it is the result of over 600 million deaths of citizens. Not soldiers, not in war. I'm talking about citizens, who the vast majority of which probably voted for this state of government. I'm not here to dick measure evil. That's not my point. My point is that we need to pay attention to what we're actually asking for. Because history tells us that the very first people to be lined up against the wall and shot are those who fought to put the same people who shoot them in power. So my whole point of this video is not to make you uncomfortable, it's not to get political, and it's not to try to sway you one way or the other. All I want you to do, if you want to, is just take a second to pay attention and look around at the current political situation, look at who is currently in power, and look at their actions over their words. Pay attention to who is actually telling you to think one way or the other, and then try to determine whether or not they have an ulterior motive based on who is funding them and who they actually report to behind the scenes. And if you think the way I used to think and see the things that I've described in this video so far as something that happens in only foreign nations and not in the United States, think about this. People who are my age have not actually been alive long enough to see very many leaders of foreign nations step down from power, which means the ideology of the leaders who run those foreign nations are still the same as from before we were born. So what has changed? I'll tell you right now, the biggest change that I've seen within my lifetime of being born in the late 80s is the ability to transfer information from anywhere in the world to anyone of any age who lives in any nation. Propaganda is a hell of a lot different of a ball game nowadays than flyers and articles in a newspaper, especially when you have a free market of massive corporations who are responsible for all of the media that all of our citizens watch and absorb, and there's nothing stopping them from taking whatever money is handed to them by anyone in the world. So in conclusion, again, I'm not trying to stir up controversy. I'm not trying to stir up any kind of conflict or bullshit or anything. All I want you to do is think about it. Have a good night, y'all.